Do you ever feel like this? You have so much to do and so many responsibilities, and you can just feel yourself like doing too much and crashing, and you just don't know what to do. You know something needs to happen, but you're not sure what it is. That's how I used to be. But then I had a crisis in my life, and I was exposed to something that we are calling killer dots, and I swear this is going to help you. I'm not exaggerating this just to try to get you to watch this video. If you watch this, you take this on board and you implement it, your life will improve. Hey, I forgot to say that if you're finding this helpful and you relate to it, you might want to subscribe, because this is the kind of thing we talk about here. Decluttering, simplifying, slowing, and just making our lives better. Okay, let's continue. Let me give you a little backstory to this. I have always been a person who works really hard. It's kind of a baby boomer thing because we got that from our parents and our grandparents. We were taught that it was a really good thing to work, and then it was just my nature to want to do well, to do my best job, not comparing myself to how anybody else is doing, but comparing myself to how I do. And so that is good to a point. I got really good grades in college. I did really, really well at work. I owned a company. I had like director level positions. So I was successful, but I also have a chronic illness, fibromyalgia, which I've mentioned many times before, and it taught me to a certain extent how to manage my energy. But then I had a crisis. In 2022, I got COVID, and I was extremely sick, and I was so fatigued, even more fatigued than I'd ever been with fibromyalgia. But the worst thing is that my brain stopped working really well for me. I had a harder time finding words than people my age. I had a really difficult time reading. I could read, but it put so much energy on my brain. For instance, one time I read some articles to my husband about long COVID. They wore my brain out so much that I couldn't talk for 2 days. That was really frightening. And I couldn't make decisions. I couldn't plan. And so I just basically couldn't do the kinds of things I needed to do to work. And so I ended up losing my job and had to take early retirement. So there I was. I had long COVID and I just wasn't getting better. I was sent to a neurologist who then sent me to a cognitive therapist. They are often speech therapists. So he explained to me what had happened to my brain. It was like you manage a forest and there's been a forest fire, and you look down and you can see the places that are burned out. But if the forest is being attacked by bugs, you couldn't see that from the air. You'd have to be walking through the forest and you could see this tree and this tree and this tree. Well, that is what had happened to my brain. Different little spots in my brain had been kind of burned out with COVID. The good news was that brain cells that were around those spots that really weren't doing anything could take over. But I had to give my brain and my body time to really get well. The first thing he taught me, which was the most important thing he taught me, which is what the subject of this video is, killer dots. When I told you about it, I said colored dots, but I didn't say it well because a number of years ago I had a surgery called a UPPP. My uvula was removed and my soft palate was rebuilt to solve my sleep apnea. And so that means that sometimes vowels come out incorrectly. So if you hear me say words that don't sound quite right, that is what has happened. I know the word. It doesn't want to come out right. Anyway, this whole thing goes so well with essentialism, and we need to have a little bit of a review about that, but I'm not going to really go into it too deep because I did a really good video on essentialism, which I will link to in the description and at the end of this video. What we need to remember is that some of the highlights are every day should start at 0. Every day is a new day. You will decide what is the most essential thing for me to do today. You're not going to carry over your list from before. It's what am I going to do today? And it may be what is the most essential for me to do right now in this hour. So 0-based planning. That's really important because you're going to have to be able to prioritize and to recognize you can't do everything in order for the killer dots, for the colored dots to work. Another thing that Greg teaches is to build in a buffer, and that is to recognize that everything you do is going to take about 50% longer than you think it will, and I say at least 50% more energy, because we so often underestimate how much effort it is going to take for us to do that thing. That certainly is my problem problem and was my problem before. Another thing is that you got to start small. Don't try to do too big a thing all at once. I'm going to explain how that used to get me in really, really big trouble, that I tried to do that. Making things better means subtracting something. You have to make decisions. Just plain and simple, you have to make decisions. So the big message from that is you have to be able to reduce your to-do list. My cognitive therapist's name was John Linford. If you happen to be in the Utah area, Salt Lake County, Utah County, he works out of a clinic right by Utah Valley Hospital, an Intermountain Healthcare Clinic. So if you have this kind of problems and you feel like you need this kind of help, go ahead and try to get an appointment with John. He's excellent. Highly recommend him. One of my favorite people of all time, and he's just a nice person. Anyway, he quickly recognized that I am an overdoer. I do too much, and that I had a really difficult time knowing how to slow myself down so I could recover. In general, in my life, slowing myself down. So he taught me this method called killer dots. You have named it killer dots. Color dots. He never gave me a name. I need a name. Tell me in the comments, should we go with killer dots or is that too weird? And does it make sense after I explain this that it could be called killer dots? Because it does to me. I think the best thing for me to do now is we are going to go over to my desk and I am going to show you what you do instead of me just telling you about it. Show, not tell. Got one camera where I can show you this and one camera where I can talk to you. Okay, the first thing John did was he gave me just a printed calendar. He gave me some handouts, which I no longer have because I learned how to do it well enough that one day I just threw away my calendars and I threw away the handouts. So I'm just going to have to explain it to you. What we are going to do is 4 or 5 times a day. And at first I was like, what? 4 or 5 times a day? That seemed hard to me at the time, but you get used to it. 4 or 5 times a day you're going to stop and you're going to say, how do I feel? And you're going to judge it by these 4 colors. Green means that you are feeling good. This is a really good time to do things. This is the ideal state. Maybe you're not perfect, but you're feeling good and you feel like you can do things. Yellow means you're starting to get tired. Maybe your brain's tired, your body's tired, emotionally you're tired, whatever it is. You feel that fatigue coming on that we often ignore, that we feel like we just have to push through, right? If I just push on and I'll get through that, then it'll be okay and I can rest later. That is yellow. Whenever you feel yourself going into that, even if you feel like you can push forward, you need to stop. Stop, take a break. It might not be even a long break. It might be, I'm going to go walk around outside. John taught me to do things that don't tax my brain because my brain was having so much trouble. So for instance, he gave me some Uno cards one day in the session and I had to sort them by color, not by number, by color. Coloring in a coloring book. I used to use Spirograph. Do you remember Spirograph? And I would just use it to make some designs. So anything I could find that didn't make my brain work. So I didn't watch TV. I didn't scroll the phone. And like now, if I feel myself in yellow, I know I need to just go sit down and do something really relaxing for a little bit. If I get it soon enough, then I don't even have to wait that long before I can go back. In green, I can carry on. But if you're in yellow and you push through, you can get yourself into red. Red means stop. You're not feeling well. You're feeling exhausted. You may feel like it's hard to be around other people. You'll feel impatient with people. You might snap at other people. Things will come along and people want you to do something and you're like, I can't do it. I just can't do one more thing. You're just in a really kind of a frantic state. If you are there, you must pay attention to that, because if you don't, you can get in the purple, and purple is really bad news. You are really, really sick. You may even get really depressed. Some people will get suicidal in this state. It is really bad news. I was lucky I never got depressed like that when I had long COVID, but I take some medication for my fibromyalgia that helps me not to get depressed to that state. But purple was bad. When you're in purple, you might not be able to shower, to get yourself food to eat. When I spent so much time in purple during one awful 6-week period of time that John actually recommended that we get a refrigerator up here in my bedroom with healthy foods because I couldn't make it downstairs to get something to eat. For a long period of time, I bounced back and forth between red and purple, sometimes up in the yellow, very rarely, but it did happen in the green. But I mostly was in here, and it was a really bad time. And I hadn't learned how not to get down in here. So this is what you'll do. So I come along, and today is the 14th. So yesterday, this day, the 12th, I started out and I was green, I was doing good, I was checking in, and I was green, it was good, I was checking with myself, it was green, and then I got down to, okay, I really want to finish mopping this floor. I had a couple other things I just really wanted to get done because somebody was coming to the house, but I got down in yellow, and I didn't stop, and I kept pushing through it. And I got down in yellow, and I was just in yellow. I never got out of yellow the rest of the day. So yesterday I woke up, and I got all ready, and I was going to do my thing. And I actually went downstairs, and I was going to do some things in the kitchen. And then it occurred to me, no, you are in the yellow, Roseanne. You cannot. And I had something I needed to do around 5 o'clock, and I knew it was going to take an hour and a half, and it was really important. And I knew if I did any of the work around the house I wanted to do, if I recorded this video, which is what I wanted to do, I wouldn't be able to make that thing. And I really wanted to decorate my shelves for the 4th of July, but I couldn't do it. So I came upstairs, and I went back and forth. I read a little bit of a novel. I looked out the window. I tried to take a nap. And I just kept myself resting and resting and resting. And then by the time it was time to go, I was in the green. And I stayed in the green the rest of the day. And I got up today, and I was in the green. Okay, good. I'm going to be able to record my video today. But if I had gotten up yesterday and I would have said, no, I got to get that video done. This is a really good time. My 6-year-old granddaughter's not here. I'm going to do that. I might have gone down in the red. Maybe the highest I could have gotten myself up for it was yellow. And then chances are really high I wouldn't be talking to you today. So this is what a really bad morning week looks like. And it can be difficult to get yourself out of this. So just do everything you can not to get in this. If you hear this video and you recognize, wow, I'm in the red or I'm in the purple, you have got to stop and take care of yourself. Work on your sleep, work on getting healthy food easy and convenient for you so that you're not grabbing bad things just because it's easier. Maybe you're not taking a shower right then. Whatever you're having to do to just settle yourself down and give yourself the time to rest and take care of yourself without feeling guilty, because there's nothing to feel guilty about when you're taking care of yourself. It's absolutely critical because you will not be able to do the things you really want to do and need to do if you are not feeling well. Okay, so this is what a really bad time will look. You might start green, you overdo it, you don't recognize, you go in the red, you don't recognize it, and you might be yellow again, and the end of the day you're so tired you're down in red. You wake up in the morning and you're like, you're yellow, but I'm gonna do something. Man, this is orange. You're gonna do something, and you go down in the red, and you keep working, and you're in the red, and you're in the red, and then all of a sudden, guess what? You're down the purple. When you get down the purple, it can be hard. So you wake up the next morning and you didn't get restored to sleep. Maybe you're up watching TV too long and you're still in the purple, and then you're kind of resting. You get yourself up in the orange or the green, up in the red, and maybe you get to yellow, but it doesn't last long, and you get down in here. And then before you know it, this is what you're seeing on your chart, like this. And it just is going on and on and on and on. That's how my calendar looked for 6 or 7 weeks. It was just a really sad thing. And the way this had happened is I was continually like pushing the boundary. But then it was time for me to decorate my house for spring, because at that time I was doing decorating videos on my channel. I just pushed myself and did the whole house in like 2 days and cleaned the house, and I just wore myself out, and I got into the reds and purple, and I just couldn't call out for so long. Like I explained, I was in really, really bad shape. And boy, did I learn a big lesson when I was finally able to pull myself out so that my life was mostly green and yellows, maybe a red every once in a while, but green and yellows. I just felt like I'd won the lottery. John told me that most people don't have many purples. Maybe they'll have 1 or 2 a year. You'll have more reds, but not a lot, maybe once a month or something. And if you are healthier, it's easier to keep yourself in the greens with some yellow. If you have any illnesses or a lot of stress, maybe your work is extremely stressful, which mine was for a while, then it will make it harder, because cognitive effort, physical effort, and emotional stress, or things that affect your emotions, have the same effect on your body. All of these things require your body and your brain, and so they will all wear you out. So if you have a big scene with your boss, your body will feel tired. If you have a desk job and you're working really long and fast, and there's been some stress, and you haven't taken lunch, you haven't taken breaks, and you come out and you feel like you're going to physically collapse, it's because you are about ready to physically collapse. You went into the yellow at some point of the day, and maybe in the red, and you didn't recognize it and do what you needed to take care of yourself. What people will do, and what I have done in the past, is I have thought, well, I have to keep going so I can do more. But there's something called the law of diminishing returns, which means the harder you push, the more you do, the less valuable it is, and the less well it turns out. So recognizing you're in the yellow not only is good for your health, but it's also good for the results. And you'll actually be able to accomplish more, because pushing through does not bring good results. Now, when I was doing this with John, I started out with just this little calendar, but then I recognized I need to understand what I'm doing to cause this. Are there any patterns? So I got me a little planner that was about like this one. This is really cool. So I was tracking my dots, and I was tracking like a big thing that had happened that day on here. But what I really needed was this. So just a weekly view, and I would just do a brief kind of little journaling as the day went on, or at the end. And my focus was to explain what had happened that day, how I was feeling at a certain time, what activity I was doing, anything that I could think may end up being a pattern. And so I was just going along, and I was writing it. John was really impressed that I'd come up with that way of doing it, because then he could say, well, what was going on this week? And I could quickly look, and I'd go, oh, I can see that I was trying to do this, and I shouldn't have done that. So between doing those two things, the dots and then the notations, I was able to figure out what I need to do to take better care of myself. What is essential? Do the essential things and don't do the non-essential things. Am I in this wrong mindset of doing those things? Another thing that John told me to do is on every day, and which works far better when you have this weekly thing going on, is to every day write down one thing you're grateful for. When you are tracking these things and you're trying to get yourself so that you get your life better, and maybe you're having a lot of reds and purples and things just feel really rough, it's good for you to make at least one positive thought about how you are blessed. Just to try to keep the positivity and to recognize this really is temporary. How I'm feeling right now is temporary. I can help myself along, so this period is shorter. So if you are someone like me that has a chronic illness, this is not going to cure your chronic illness. If you have family issues or you have financial issues, this is not going to cure them and make them go away. But this will give you a better ability to handle it, to take care of yourself, which gives you a better ability to handle it, and just increase the overall quality of your life. I really hate to say that I'm glad I got long COVID because it was truly a horrific thing, but it did bring me to this. It did lead me to John, and John teaching me this, which was very valuable. It's a good example of how really good things can come out of bad situations. All right, here is the video about essentialism. If you haven't seen it, you really should. And here is a video that YouTube, who knows you better than I do, feels you're going to really enjoy. And I'll see you again. Bye.